Hi all, it's Ollie Sinclair here from Crimson. This is the Fireside chat for the Wave release 2023. Get the right year, shall I? I'm here with my colleague Adam. Adam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Adam Throssell, one of the Dynamics 365 practice leads at Crimson. So work closely with Ollie and the team to keep track of all the new features.
Good stuff. Okay, so the agenda really for today is just having a look at what's coming down the line in terms of both Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform Wave Release 1. So there's some bits and bobs that we would like to talk about. A lot around the formatting and the understanding of how Wave releases are being done these days. Then we'll do a couple of bits and bobs around some actual demos of some, I guess, early access features or some things that we've highlighted. We'll also have hot off the press, just a little conversation about the MBAS, the Microsoft Business Application event that happened last night. If you're listening to this on the 5th, yeah, we'll take it from there. So yeah, I'll get started. Adam, interesting how these wave releases are happening these days. Do you want to just explain sort of where we've got to in terms of what used to happen and really where we find ourselves in terms of the format of wave releases for both D365 and the Power Platform?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think if we go back a couple of years, we were almost in a situation where there were two wave releases, a spring and an autumn release. And back then, there was a whole heap of functionality that would almost be grouped into the wave release. And at the time, we used to do a whole lot of work around getting ready for the release, making sure our systems were all up to date, making sure the functionality was going to work, and going through that dev test process. And we developed a really nice, sleek process of doing upgrade assessments with our customers. But then somewhere along the line, it all changed. And rather than a wave release describing a major release, what we now find ourselves in the position is that actually the wave release describes functionality that's going to happen or be released over the coming months, generally 6 monthly. So when we get an acknowledgement of this wave 1 release, what we're actually getting is over the next 6 months, here are all the features that are likely to come along. And then it's down to people like you and I to work out, okay, well, which of those are impactful, which of those are coming next month, so we need to be kind of on our toes about them, and which of them are coming in 6 months' time, so perhaps they get moved down the list a little bit. And I think you'll probably agree, it's a constant challenge of keeping up with some of the functionality.
It really is. It's funny because because we are that step closer to Microsoft and the technologies, and really here to help our customers keep up to scratch with what's going on there. I think traditionally, when we saw the wave releases as these sort of big bang approach in terms of back in the on-prem day or the old school days of how products were released by Microsoft in the business application space, it was a version update, a patch here, a patch there, and there were big things that we would be able to assess, understand, and as you said, sort of take forward. And I guess we're into this new wave of delivery coming in from Microsoft, and it's how best to structure that and how best to have that communication with our customers. I think it's good in one way where because we are already on a SaaS model, we are a part of sort of a subscription service to a certain effect onto Microsoft Dynamics and the Power Platform. That it's nice to see these releases coming really as soon as they're available. We can get access to these features and this functionality. And I guess what we really need to see, what we really need to view these wave releases as, is exactly what you said. Now we have a clear understanding of the roadmap in which is what the product's going to do for the next 6 months and plan for that, rather than sit there and do the rigorous upfront testing around sort of new features and functionalities and when it's going to fit. What we need to do is align maybe our customers' product roadmap to understand the impact of their implementation roadmap or their feature onboarding roadmap, with the consideration of what we see coming down the line. Not always the case. Microsoft do do like to add a few gotchas right without right at the end, which is always nice. But what do you think in terms of deprecated features? Is there things upcoming in this wave release that sits there and is a new thing coming on?
I think there's a couple of things, and we've talked previously about the roadmap portal, and I think we use the word roadmap quite frequently, and it's a bit of an apt word really of describing a load of features and when they're going to be released, when is early access, when is general availability, and we'll share some links at the end of the video of the roadmap portals for both Dynamics and Power Platform. Certainly for me, at the moment, I'm looking at things like those portals, the Office 365 Admin Center notifications, the wave release videos, the business apps announcements, and the presentations that we had yesterday. The common thing that we're thinking about at the moment is the OData deprecation, so OData v2. Again, one thing I will say is that generally speaking, with deprecations, we get a fair amount of notice. If you think back to the days of XRM page in JavaScript, I think we probably ended up with about 2 years worth of time to actually sort that out. And similarly with the OData deprecation. So we're coming up on that. One of the other key things we are coming up on, not necessarily part of this wave release, but around SLAs and entitlements. So the need to migrate those from the old school automatic record creation rules into flows or into Power Automate. And again, Microsoft have provided us with a guide and a tool to do that. But as of the 1st of April, the general support for those things finished. So we need to make sure everything's migrated across. But what I'd quite like to do first is almost delve into the new release, into a new system, and almost talk through some of the UI changes, because I think we're normally very quick to talk about these new upcoming big things that are going to hit us in 6 months' time. But actually, the things we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes or so are things that everybody's going to notice. And like it or not, they're coming. So what we want to make sure is that we pick up on those as well as focusing on the big hitting things.
No, I think so, and I think knowing the audience and knowing the impact of these changes or these features, it's always nice to focus on those ones that are going to impact pretty much everybody that's going to be using the core products and the core product set. So yeah, that does make a lot of sense to focus on those areas. So within that, in terms of the wave releases, I think just to summarize, it is changing, and the way that we need to approach wave releases is absolutely changing, and it's very much more of an informative roadmap, where we just need to make sure that we can give our customers as much insight into that roadmap and our assessment on those pieces as much as possible. So within that, have you got something to show us today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let me bring up an example of a Dynamics 365 environment which has had the Wave 1 functionality enabled. And immediately, I'm just going to start off with a view of contacts. So nice and simple. We're all familiar with contacts and accounts in Dynamics. So we'll bring up our list of contacts. And straight away on the screen, you can see there's been some changes. So first of all, we'll notice that the layout has changed. So we've now got our ribbon buttons that are nicely grouped into a little area at the top. We've also got our views, again, which have been grouped into a nice little area. One of the key differences, though, is we're all used to going up to the top and selecting how many items we'd like in our views. And we're used to having a little button at the bottom, which shows page 1 to 50 or 1 to 250, depending on what we've selected. With Wave 1 of 23, that's actually now gone. And we have what Microsoft are calling infinite scrolling. So what we've actually got is a list that will endlessly scroll through all of our contacts or all of our accounts common across all the system, with no concept of paging anymore, which I actually think is quite nice. It means that we no longer have to scroll through.
Does look quite smooth. It's interesting that the alphabet chooser down the bottom has gone away as well, which don't know how, sometimes when I'm looking at, good example is contacts. You've got a raft of contacts, and rather than doing the quick searching at the top or global searching, it was always, I don't know, quite nice to have those alphabets just to get you to kind of nearly where you need to look to.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it's I think it's a different approach and it's a different experience. I must admit, when I found out that it would be infinitely scrolling, I think we both shared that we were slightly concerned that we'd get to the bottom and then we'd wait and then another list would appear. But actually, to be fair, this environment has got, I think, somewhere in the region of 10,000 contacts in the system, and it is quite fluid in terms of scrolling through. So it's quite impressive. But the next thing that we'll talk about is advanced find, and we're all now hopefully used to advanced find and using the filters at the top of the view. One of the things that we all noticed and all had a small gripe about when we had the last release was that when we were using lookup fields in any of these filters, we couldn't do a true lookup. What we were faced with was just an ability to do a name lookup only. So if I was looking at a contact and I wanted to find a related company, I could say company name equals, and then it would present me with this list. And that was only searchable by the name, which is, of course, really difficult to actually find anything. So what we've got now is we've got the ability to do an advanced lookup, and that brings us back into the functionality that we're used to. So now we can do a full lookup, we can do searching, we can do filtering, and we can also change the views and use any of our views. So the traditional lookup is back with an advanced find.
Which is kind of good. I think, we always, certainly back in the old days when advanced find was very clunky, it was, explaining to our customers that advanced finds are really, really, really powerful tool, but you need a little bit of learning to understand sort of the structure of your data, how it all fits, but also the quirky way in which we need to do advanced finds. And I think this feature, to me, just seems like we're getting that next step down into being able to sort of democratize the way that you can sort of change the views and access different parts of data within the system, which is, it's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, and it really is quite a nice interface to be able to apply filters, to be able to add columns to the views. It really was a nice interface and a nice change from, as you said, the clunky old world. But there were just a couple of key things like this that were missing, which led us to go back to the old world and to click back on our familiar filter funnel icon at the top. So I'm going to go into one of these contact records, and again just look at some of the changes on the forms. So again, we immediately noticed that the header information has been separated out into its own designated little area. Again, the ribbon has been amended, and also the sections on the forms have also been changed. And one of the key bits, and one of the nice parts, I think, is the differentiation between what is a label and what is actually an area that you can input the data. And we get this really quite nice effect of highlighting the fields that we've clicked on. And it's just a much cleaner interface, I think.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think, again, one of the interesting things about specifically around model driven apps was, how can we utilize the real estate So making sure we've got a smarter understanding of what's in that header, where the ribbon bar sits, and also how we can structure the page, and understand, what's a label. Those rage clicks of clicking on a label, and actually you need to click on the actual column area where you can enter in the information, and highlighting that. And to be honest, that's very similar to a lot of websites and data input websites that we see now. So it's kind of aligning to that. And it's certainly from an accessibility perspective, it's going to be clearer for those users too. So that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And final thing in terms of layout is, if I go onto the company page, what we've got on this screen is the company details and also just a simple subgrid of related contacts. Again, you can see the concept of infinite scrolling has been applied to the subgrid views as well. So here I've got 217 rows. I'm used to having 1 to 50, but actually it's scrolling through all of them for me, and it's loading a new set as I scroll to the bottom. That is really quite a nice feature. So
really good.
I know you were keen to get into Copilot and a little bit of Chat GPT. I know you were desperate to get it in during this video. So do you want to talk through a couple of the things that you've been looking at around the columns and some of the functionality around formulas?
Yeah, sure, I will do. I think, yeah, you're right. We need to save some time for some Copilot talk, even though there's no demos yet. But yeah, we do need to talk about that. So yeah, I'll quickly take the screen and show some things. Okay. So yeah, so some things that have come through within the Power Platform itself. One of the areas is around what we're looking at is PowerFX. Now, PowerFX, for people that don't know, is the Power Platform's low-code language. Now, when we say low-code, we really do mean low-code. If any Excel whiz kids out there are thinking, how does my Excel wizardry relate to how I can create Power Apps and work with the Power Platform? Well, the good news is you can a lot, because there is, PowerFX is really, based off some of the language and the concepts that you would see within sort of equations within Excel. And due to that, what they're trying to do is everywhere we can extend the product. This is Microsoft brains going on. Anywhere we can extend the product to allow that low code, no code access, to give greater functionality to the end users or configurators of the system, we're going to go do that. And what we try and do is to simplify, but also have multiple areas of which you can use the same skill sets. So the cool thing about it is currently within Canvas apps, and within certain elements of Power Automate, you are able to use this PowerFX low-code, no-code language. What they're trying to do is then roll that out to other areas. And one of the areas that they're looking to is around columns themselves. So as you have a table, you've got a table that has a number of columns, and you've got, text values, you've got currency fields, you've got all of the specific things you can see on here. Now, what they've actually done is enabled you to create a formula column. So this is a space on the table that actually combines some data from other columns in that table to then produce something. So a typical example, which we've got right here, is around total donation amount. So at the moment, this is my donation table, and this collates all of the information around donors creating some donations. And what we can see in here is that there is a total donation amount, which is actually a decimal, but it's come across as a calculated field. So if I click in that and show you what total donation amount is actually doing behind the scenes, I've created it as a formula column, and I've called it total donation amount. I've specified that the data type is decimal. Quite important, especially when you're using formula columns that you want to get the right calculation, you want to get the end result as the right format. Here, what I've done is within this donation table, it holds the monthly amount and the number of months my donor is going to be donating. Brilliant. So for a total donation amount, I can just times the the monthly amount by the number of months. So a really, really straightforward formula that shows you those areas. Now that's absolutely fantastic. And yes, the pessimists of the world will say, that's great, Ollie, but we can kind of already do that, right? And yes, you can. You can do some of this stuff using calculated fields and those sort of elements in terms of maybe some business rules on the client side in a form. What's really useful about formula columns is this is just the beginning. We're trying to normalize back down to what Power FX is from a Canvas app, from a model-driven app perspective, but also they're just starting the journey with releasing some of the core functionality or core functions of Power FX. What we're expecting to see in the future with this is to have some really powerful logic that you can attribute to the column itself. And the really cool thing about that is it's going to be sort of in real time. So rather than say a roll up field, which allows you to roll up a number of sub record values into a top level value, that's great, but it's asynchronous. It can take some time. You have to click a recalculate button if you want to get there immediately. And also from, say, for example, business rules or calculated columns, well, business rules, certainly, you would need to be in a form to be able to have this information calculated for you. So what you want to be doing is normalizing that at the lowest level, actually at the data level, and then bring in some really powerful functionality. So yes, at the moment there's probably about 20 to 24 functions you can use. There is not a huge amount of support for decimal in here, and there are a couple of other limitations at the moment. But what we're seeing is a real shift in allowing Power FX to be that combination of UI based code, low code, no code option, as well as your back end data as well. So it's going to be really exciting that being implemented, but what's going to come down the line from that is going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you even think what we've gained in the last year or so, I mean, as you described, we first saw this in the kind of Canvas apps space. We then moved across into model-driven apps. We're looking at the ability now of being able to add Power FX into ribbon buttons, into some of the functions, use reusable functions. So a consistency of approach is what we all really want, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's a really good point you mentioned. You're able to actually reuse your own command. So, for example, if you've got Power FX and it's a bit of a custom understanding or a custom feature or functionality that you've got, you can reuse that in so many different areas. So, when we're talking about reuse and keeping as efficient as possible, but also sharing with the greater community, right? So, if you've got an absolute whiz kid that's really, really good at creating a Power FX formula, very specific for a business use, your citizen developers will then be able to utilize that and be able to then use that in their apps or use that for defining some of their columns going forward and creating that. So that real, the understanding of that fusion team becomes ever so important, certainly when we get into this level. So yeah, it's a really good shout.
Yeah, and I think I'm right in saying that it's actually only been around for, is it 12 months or so? 2021 that this was first actually announced.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's really early on. So it's going to be great. It really will be. I think that what I'm really looking forward to is once you're getting into that replacing the roll-up fields. So when you're being able to reference specific relationships within Power FX and being able to grab values from related tables, that's when all of a sudden you'll start to see some real good value coming out of this, and the use cases of how people are going to use this will expand as well.
Yeah.
So there was another thing I wanted to show today, and the underlying functionality of this has been around for a while, But as we're onto this, let's make it easy, let's do more with less, and bridging and sort of democratizing the way that Dynamics is going to be used and the applications are going to be created. I want to talk to you today just a little bit around virtual tables and what's going on with virtual tables. So for any of you that have listened into some of my industry aligned webinars, there was a number of months ago, it might have even been over a year ago, where we were talking about how we deal with data within the Power Platform, within Dynamics, using Dataverse as that core understanding, but also how we punch out into different areas and reference different data. One of the common tools in which we like to do that is virtual tables. Now, virtual tables are basically a window into external data sources that you would be able to see within the Dataverse. Now, what usually used to happen before this release was that it was a little bit of more of a technical configuration around creating a virtual table and being able to access that data and keep that up to date. And there were a few restrictions in terms of the way the data was formatted, things like having to have a GUID as a record identifier, even in the external data source, meant it had quite some obvious limitations around virtual entities. Well, the good thing is some of those restrictions have gone away, but what they've also done is created a nice UI-friendly path into creating your own virtual tables. And I'll just want to take you through the journey today. So I'm on my solution Wave demo, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new table, and I'm going to create it from an external data. So what Microsoft have done is this great guide through the creation process. At the moment, you can only specify two types of external connections, one to anything within SharePoint. So if you're thinking of your SharePoint lists, you can start doing this now. And also any SQL servers, including on-prem if you have an on-premise gateway. You can have some SQL Server connected to this as well. I expect this list to grow a lot and then start to see that all of the connections or the custom connectors you can create, you would be able to start seeing a list of those coming in here as well. What I'm going to show you is just going in to one of my demo SharePoint lists. So I'm going to go ahead and try and find my SharePoint. So I'm just going to go ahead and search on this one. And I'm in the consultancy team, so I'm going to go and find some SharePoint lists in the consultancy team. And I'm going to go ahead and choose one of my lists that comes up. So already we don't have to worry too much about, finding the right URL, finding the right this and that. Because we've got that connection, I've already connected as Ollie Sinclair or Oliver Sinclair at Crimson. It knows I'm going to be accessing my SharePoint area. It's going to choose from the sites that I have access to and go and find my list. And I'm just going to choose the demo list. And then I'm going to go and have a look at the configuration. Now, this is the really cool part around this wizard. It does a lot for you in terms of matching the data and being able to create the virtual table attributes that you would have within Dataverse to reference those table columns in your SharePoint list or your columns in your SQL table. So once this loads, it's going to give us an understanding of the display name or the plural name and the schema name, all of those things that you can tweak and change. Say, for example, your SharePoint list was contact records. You don't want to call your virtual table contacts because obviously you've already got contacts within the Dataverse environment anyway. So you want to make sure that you're changing your display name and your plural names. But what you can see here is that the schema name has come along. So it's very, very important that when you're creating your virtual tables, it is solution aware. So anything you're creating, as you can see on the schema down here, I've gone in through my Ollie Wave demo solution, and it has attributed the publisher, which is a Crimson publisher. So again, be very, very careful when you're creating or defining your virtual tables to be in the solution in which you want to pick up all of the publisher and extension details. But what you can see here is that it's seen my list. It's my ID, title, start name, start date, description, asset ID, modified, etc. So it's given me all of my column names, and I can go ahead and say, yep, that's absolutely fine. It's going to review the external data source, and it's going to create my table. Now, I've obviously already created this table before, so I'm just going to close this and actually show you, okay, well, the demo list has come through now, and it's actually, you can view the data just like you can view any other table within Dataverse, and it's got that approach, knowing that behind the scenes, this information, demo test, another test, another test, if I was to navigate to my SharePoint list, you would see that here as well. So what you can see is that anything created outside of the system in terms of on SharePoint list, you can automatically plumb that into Dynamics and reference it and use it to whatever you need. So, and again, really, really low in terms of configuration time, so that a lot of people will be able to start doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think back to when these were first announced, in order to achieve what you've just achieved in 3-4 minutes, we'd have had to configure a virtual entity data source. We'd have then had to do a data provider. Then we'd have had to map the fields manually, making sure we got the entity name right, the field names right. And it was just, it was workable, but it was
Yep.
long-winded, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's it. You know, there's a lot in which when we're defining virtual tables, you just want to take all of the information and all of the understanding from the destination. So from the source. So why why did it have to be too much of a cumbersome element to redefine everything you've redefined already in an external data source? So yeah, I agree. What would be really nice is to see some more connections and seeing if we, you know, when they come into that wizard, it really will truly show the value. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And the one thing I'm particularly looking forward to, and I think this has been, it's been in the releases before, but it seems to have disappeared, which was the virtual entities between Dynamics or data source
Yes,
environments.
yes, yeah.
And it was something
It
that was announced, I think last year, but seems to have kind of evaded being delivered just yet, doesn't it?
it's really interesting. Yeah, I have seen that come in and out a few times, and it's very interesting where that's going to land. I don't know why technically that's harder than anything else. I don't know whether it's around permissions and security, but obviously within a connection, you'd be supplying your authentication anyway. So I didn't really understand why that was so complex versus a SharePoint list or SQL. But yeah, you're dead right. I think if you think about the enterprise implementations of Dynamics 365 and where Microsoft is going with their citizen developers and the Power Platform environments, wouldn't it be brilliant if we had the ability to define virtual entities that are a protected source of data for your organization-wide data and allow them to be referenced in other environments that are your play environments or your citizen developer environments that do small productivity, knowing that with data loss prevention policies and virtual entities, you can protect that data, and you know that's going to be used in the right way. Brilliant, right? So yeah, really, really good. Cool. Okay, so we've probably got a little bit of time, hopefully, to talk through some new things that have been happening, and really give you hot off the press our summaries, I guess, of the MBAS event. So if you've got the slide deck up, I'll just quickly stop presenting if you want to present that slide deck. Cool. So yeah, first question really, Adam. How did you see the event? Was it exciting for you? Was it good?
Yeah, I mean, there's always I'm always skeptical when we go into these events, and you know, you say hot off the press. It was quite literally yesterday. I I I enjoyed watching the events. I think sometimes I'm always quite at a level of detail that perhaps the events are perhaps a little bit higher. So when people are talking about these things and people talk about Power Automate and the changes, people talk about virtual tables, I'm almost thinking, well, okay, how am I going to implement that, or how does that actually work? And particularly where we were talking about Copilot and we're talking about some of the kind of AI tools, it's really a hot topic at the moment, but I'm trying not to allow myself to be sucked into the hype, but I'm really waiting for the day where we can actually get to grips with it and actually do a real life demo of how we could really use it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a really good shout, and I think what I like about the announcement of Copilot is that there is a long running theme through all of the components of the Power Platform that talks around AI and the influence of open AI and GPT, right? So that's obvious. But they were kind of already in the product already. So I think the previous wave release, we were talking about Power Automate being able to using natural language to create Power Automate flows. And that was obviously using the AI model that we're talking about within Copilot. And I think they're just kind of just chucked on a boatload of functionality, but also included some that was already existing to make this Copilot element. I think what was really interesting was certainly for the business application side, Copilot for us is twofold. You've got Copilot for makers, and you've got Copilot for create for the end user doing things, right? So the first element where it's people actually doing it and adding and aiding productivity, it's all around being able to summarize data and information, whether it be on an email or whether it be through a virtual agent and understanding a conversation and adding some intelligence into that. That's amazing. And that's brilliant. And I guess what we're expecting to see is a huge leap in terms of productivity with the people being able to do things quicker, faster, cheaper, easier. And that's great.
But if you
What I'm got
one of the things that we didn't kind of go into specific detail about this, but one of the things that was discussed again yesterday was around the automated reminders and almost scanning through your data, looking at the progress of a particular record, and then being able to suggest reminders. And it really is quite impressive. But again, it's that, okay, so it's very impressive. How do we now implement that in the real world? What are the real world scenarios where we're going to aid somebody's job or somebody's life by improving efficiency, as you say, whether it be for a maker, whether it be for an end user, whatever it be? That's the key bit of interest for me.
No, I agree. I definitely see, you know, where we've got sort of well, the obvious area for us is around this customer insights. So there's so many times where, you know, you've got a big data practice, let's say, and you've got your AI and your ML analytics people looking at your data in all sorts of ways. But sometimes, as a business stakeholder or somebody who's interested in that data but doesn't have the insights, the technology insights to be able to do this, just being able to get a little bit closer by asking open questions and broad questions and then coming up with some sensible results is going to be fantastic. So from an analytics perspective, huge. But I do see it from a you know, from an end user, you know, a contact center agent sat there talking generally to a customer, and they're asking questions and being able to understand, well, using AI to understand what that ask is, and using the AI machine logic to then find the right answer for you, so that you can then be informed at the point in which you're sending that information back. So I think, you know, not only virtual agents and finding that chat, but also just responding to emails. How many times have we sort of seen, and I guess this is the evolution of emails. We've seen it where if you've got omni-channel engagement, you've got your quick responses to queries and questions. This is kind of like that, but it's just really on steroids, where you actually can look past more data, and like those canned responses are great, but they're sort of generic canned responses. This way, it's kind of a very specific and understood canned response that you can edit and then quickly then go and put that in. What's really interesting, and I think they did mention it on the day, was that the user that is using the system is still the focus point. It's not the fact that we're trying to replace a contact center agent. What we're trying to do is empower those contact center agents to get to the right information and facilitate whatever they need to do for their customer in the quickest, best way. So that was really nice, because I know, a lot of people, a lot of the scaremongers are out there that look at this AI, see, oh, great, that's brilliant. So I don't really need a contact center agent, or I don't need a salesman anymore. I don't need a this, I don't need a that. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just using this tool to really empower those end users to be far more productive.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the thing is, it's about engagement, isn't it? And we're all used to, or we were all used to 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe, where language processing was kind of in its infancy, and no matter what you asked, the system wouldn't understand you. And whether it was trying to interact with systems in cars, whether it was trying to interact with things on your phone, the processing of speech and language was really quite basic, wasn't it? And you could just about get away with send a text, with send an email. And maybe if you had an email with about 20 words, 5 or 6 of them would be correct. And again, we've gone from that to now being able to look at our entire system, then break it down into an individual record, and then be able to process the records related to it to understand what we should do next based on what we did next 300 other times. And that's the impressive thing for me, because it is, as you say, it's not about replacing individuals or cutting back on individuals. It's about giving those individuals the tool set and the ability to be more productive and be more efficient in what they're doing. Even the little things that we see pop up in Teams, where somebody will send us a message and we now get a couple of little things that are pre-canned responses. And actually, they're pretty spot on. Not quite as impressive as this, but it's towards the same vein, isn't it?
It is, and that and funnily enough, this co-pilot movement, this AI, implementing AI into everything that we do, it's because we haven't seen that evolution in quite some time. And co-pilot for us within business applications is great, but it's also there's a version of co-pilot M365 for just the Microsoft stack as well. So ingraining in that to PowerPoint presentations, to Excel, to Word, and to Outlook is also going to be really, really, really powerful. So I guess we don't want to keep everybody too long, so we probably just will really, really quickly. I'll just do a quick recap on some of the things that we heard about yesterday. Certainly with Power Apps, the natural language to build applications is going to be great for those citizen developers that really want to talk to their maker engine and get them to make something that's appropriate. We're at that level now. And it will be interesting to see how useful that will be and how many people will be able to jump on this maker journey with the Power Platform and use that. And again, with Power Automate, we've already seen the natural language to build new flows, but that AI builder that can sort of generate texts or sentiments or summarize documentations is going to be brilliant. For Power Pages, there's lots in there around how, again, funny enough, how they're going to be using virtual entities, very similar to my demonstration there. Once you've got a virtual table within the Dataverse, then it's actually then producing that at the Power Pages area, so your portal will then have access directly to those virtual entities and be able to create elements through that. So it kind of goes through Dataverse, but doesn't really, because actually the data sits within your destination database or whatever it may be. And then virtual agents, probably the biggest, I guess, improvement from an AI perspective. Assistance in building topics. We saw the demo, which was so quick, so swish, where they literally created a brand new virtual agent from understanding the information and the data from a single website. So you interject, say, crimson.co.uk into a virtual agent, it will sort of mine through your pages and understand the topics and understanding from a simple navigation perspective, but also using that results gathering from GPT to actually define a virtual agent path. And then you can just go ahead and fix and change up those different areas. Amazing. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, absolutely. What we'll also do, again, we talked about sharing links at the start. We'll share a few things. We'll share the links to the roadmap for both Dynamics and Power Platform. We'll share the links to our release wave blogs that we've produced, which have got some screenshots, so you can go through those at your leisure. And of course, this video will be uploaded soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, guys, if you want to know more about what Crimson do or how we can help and assist in anything that you're looking to do, please reach out. There's some more information, as Adam said, in the comments below. And please, if you want to subscribe to the Crimson YouTube channel, you can then see more videos and more insights from the likes of myself, Adam, and the team here at Crimson, whether that's vertical aligned elements or what's coming in the new wave releases, or Ask the Experts channel as well. So lots of content for you guys. Thanks very much for listening through our waffle of Dynamics and Power Platform. It's been really good fun. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Bye-bye.